Friends of Christ, Martin Luther has explanations to each of the Ten Commandments in Luther's Small Catechism. And the first commandment, he explains it this way: we should fear, love, and trust in God above all things. All things, including ourselves. That word trust is only shown in the explanation of the first commandment, not in the other 9. The other 9 have we should fear and love God, so that. But in the first commandment, we should fear, love, and trust in God above all things. Word comes off of our lips quite easily. A word that isn't so well ingrained in our hearts, because we only like to trust ourselves in many situations. There's just too much evil going on in the world, too much tragedy, too much disaster. We just don't know if God's in control. We question his benevolence. A story was told to me about Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player. I don't know how he did it, but you know, when you play professional sports, the only way to get from one venue to another is usually via airplane. And Wayne Gretzky had a fear of flying. He struggled about getting in that airplane. He was asked, why, oh Wayne, do you struggle with flying? He says, I struggle with loss of control. What he was saying is, I'm trusting in the technology of man that this plane will get me from my place to this destination safely. I struggle that I'm not in the pilot's seat. I'm trusting the pilot to stay awake, make no errors. I struggle. And when I'm in that airplane, have lost control. I think we can all relate with that in some way, shape, or form in our lives. If we're truly going to let things go into the hands of God, we've got to communicate to him, you are in control. I am not. The gospel reading today is a story about control. The disciples were put into a boat by Jesus and told to sail to the other side. And I will meet you over there after I dismiss the crowd. This story follows the feeding of the 5,000, which you heard last Sunday. The disciples get into this boat. Before you know it, a storm overtakes them. The Sea of Galilee is kind of a unique sea. It's a unique freshwater lake. It kind of sits like in a basin, surrounded by hills and mountains. And so, when a wind gets into that area, it'll drive up the waves, and it'll come upon you really unexpectedly. Kind of like the winds at Wrigley Field. When all of a sudden the game is going well, but now winds pick up and the ball flies everywhere except where the players expect it to be. The disciples take off. Clear sailing. Jesus is not with them. Shortly after the takeoff, they meet a storm. And the winds, both Matthew and Mark record this event, the winds are contrary to them. And I think about this. Why do they want to fight? What is it about them that they feel they need to get to that destination at a certain time? When you're fighting the wind and the waves like this, and the wind and the waves are all against you, why don't you just drop the sails, pick up the oars, and let the wind and waves take you where they're going to take you? Why fight it? Was it a matter of pride? Were the disciples wanting to say, yeah, we got there in time just like Jesus asked us to? God help us if we came late? Was it a matter of power that they want to beat the storm? Never really understood why they just didn't drop the sails and drop the oars and just head back to the shore. Let the wind take them. I'm surely Jesus would have understood, right? Hey, Jesus, I'm sorry we were late, but we got caught up in this unexpected storm. Do you think Jesus would have said, yeah, I understand, that's okay? I am one that likes to sometimes let it go, especially in canoes. Some years ago, this gentleman, Mr. Lentz, his name was Floyd, he's always looking for a canoe partner. And he knew that I enjoyed canoeing. So he asked if I would be his canoe partner, and we'd go down the Kankakee River just north of our town. I said, sure, Floyd, we'll do that. I like to canoe. His daughter worked for the forest preserve, and she assured her father and me that that river was flowing at 7 miles an hour. It's a nice current. Floyd wanted to do a 14-mile journey. I'm thinking, 2 hours, we'll be done. That'll be all right. I can stand 2 hours in a canoe. So we disembarked 14 miles away from our destination. That river did not flow 7 miles an hour. Lucky if it flowed 2 miles an hour. But you know what? A day off, I'm taking my time. I'm enjoying life. And I said, I was going to think 2 hours, but it looks like we're going to be here for a while. Floyd said to me, Pastor, what side of the boat you want? You want to take the front or the back? Well, if you are knowledgeable about canoeing, you know that you always want the back because you don't have to really paddle much. You just need to put the oar in the back and control the direction of the canoe. The front person's got to do all the work, but the back person can paddle if they want. Not me. I'm going to let it flow. So the river is not moving as fast as we were told, and Mr. Lentz, he's like 75, 70 years old, and he is paddling up the river down as fast as possible. I mean, he's working up a sweat. And he's wondering why the canoe is not moving as fast as he thinks it was. I know it's not 7 miles an hour, but two of us should be paddling. We should be moving this canoe a little bit faster. Then he looked back at me, and he saw that I had the oar in the water and 2 beers in my hand. And I said, Floyd, I'm just letting it go. We'll get there when we get there. I'm not going to fight this. I wonder why the disciples just didn't have that attitude. Why did they fight it? A matter of pride, a matter of not wanting to lose control. Doesn't make sense to me. As they are battling these stormy conditions, they see this apparition that looks like Jesus. Now, they're questioning whether or not it's a ghost or is it really Christ. They're not sure. But what would you think? You see someone walking on water, you think it's a real human being? Or you think like, oh, I'm seeing things. I'm seeing ghosts. They, of course, thought they were seeing ghosts. They became scared. That's what Matthew says. They became very, very afraid. Jesus then says, take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. I got this. You guys don't have it, but I do. I got this. What I find interesting is that the Gospel of Mark records this same narrative, but Mark also says Jesus was walking as if he was going to pass them by. I think Mark was trying to communicate the message that Jesus was letting the disciples know, I am here if you want me. Are you ready to give up control? Because if you're not ready to give up control, I will just continue to keep on walking. And you guys can have it all by yourself. The disciples are crying out to Jesus. They want his help. They recognize in the midst of the storm, he can probably do something they cannot do. It is beyond their control, so they cry out to Christ, and he comes to help them. But wait a minute, they're really not sure if this is a true guy, right? Peter is going to be the brave spokesperson for the group of the disciples and said, Lord, if it is you, tell me to walk on that water. It was a test of control. Now, why do I say it was a test of control for Peter? You got to remember, he was a fisherman. And as a fisherman, he was also a good swimmer. Even in the Gospel of John, chapter 21, remember when Jesus shows up on the shore after the resurrection and the disciples recognize it is the Lord? Peter jumps out of the boat and he swims to the shore. He's a good swimmer. So he was going to test this apparition within controlled environment. So, Lord, if it is you, tell me to come out. So I imagine Peter doing this after Jesus says, come on out. Imagine him grabbing the edge of the boat, taking a step out on the water and saying, like, oh, it's going to hold my weight. Because I can always come back to the boat. I got 11 other guys here who can help me in. I don't know about that guy, but I got 11 here. So, yeah, that works. And then he steps out another step. Yeah, that works. And he keeps stepping out, stepping out, stepping out. Then he sees the wind and the waves, and he begins to look back, and he sees, oh my, I am beyond the point of no return. Those guys are too far to help me. And in these wind and the waves, I will not be able to swim back. I'm in peril. I'm in danger. And remember the story? Peter then begins to do what? Sink. Sink. He recognizes he was no longer in control. And he couldn't save himself. Those guys couldn't save him. And he only cries out to the one that could. Lord, save me. Sometimes we have to get to that point, right? Before we recognize God is in control and God's got this. We've got to be drowning before we turn it over. Peter turns it over to Jesus. And I love what Matthew says. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand. He didn't delay. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand. The whole story ends how? After seeing this wonderful, miraculous event, Jesus welcomes Peter back into the boat, brings him back into the boat, brings the boat to shore. One of the disciples confess at the end of the narrative, truly you are the Son of God. Because only in the Bible do we hear that God controls wind and waves. You just controlled wind and waves. You must be God. Truly, you are the Son of God. As we look at this narrative and apply it to our life today, we may easily turn it into an Aesop fable. Aesop fables, they're moral-based, and morals are based on laws. So when you look at Aesop fable, you're kind of like saying this. Oh, well, the point of the story is we should learn to trust in God. Anytime you use that word should, you're already talking law, like it's something we need to be doing. I want today to turn this truly only into gospel. Stay away from moral ideas. And what gospel things take place? What things take place in this story where God does things for us and we're totally passive? Well, number one, did you see what he did for Peter? In the midst of the doubt, in the midst of the disciples' doubt, what did he do? He chastised them a little bit. Oh, ye of little faith, why didn't you believe? But he yet saved them, right? He forgave them their doubts. He didn't let Peter sit in that water almost drowning and says, you know what? You need to learn your lesson and you need to drown a little bit more before I save you so you start trusting in me. He didn't wait that long, did he? God in the gospel is a God of action, a God of deliverance, a God of salvation. Jesus reaches out his hand. So as we look at this Bible verse on the screen next, Psalm 50, verse 15, many of us are probably aware of this one. Call upon me in the day of trouble, I will deliver you. Call upon me in the day of trouble. When you truly need to let it go, when you recognize you're out of control of anything in your family, whether it be your life, your marriage, your children's situations, you recognize you are drowning in the water of peril. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you. That's a promise. That's a gospel. God promises to outstretch his hand to you. Jesus promises to outstretch his hand to you to deliver you. Now, it may be a little bit different for you and for me as it was for Peter, because Peter is pulled out of the water. For us, sometimes we may still stay in the water, but he's got us, right? You know what that means, right? We're okay. Though the wind and the waves are storming around us, and even though we're still sunk in the water, we're not going to drown. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you. I will make sure that you do not drown. You may be in the water a little bit long than Peter was, but you're not going anywhere because God's got you. He's got you. You can let go. He will not. There's gospel statement. One other verse I wish to share with you this morning is from Psalm 86. For great is your steadfast love toward me. You have delivered my soul from the depths of Sheol. The Hebrew word for Sheol really means nothingness. The land of nothingness. Think about how vain life would be after we build our life through jobs and education, have children, family, and then to just absolutely go into the world of nothingness. How depressing would that be? But the promise says we will not enter into the land of nothingness, even beyond death. And what I really truly like about this verse is notice the tense of the verbs. Notice it's not you will deliver me, you have delivered me. The moment Christ outstretched his arms on the cross of Calvary is the moment he delivered us from the depths of Sheol. We are preserved from experiencing the land of nothingness because of the grace and the love and compassion of Christ Jesus, who outreached his arms on the cross to save us. So what then is the end of all of this? Do we not have somewhat the same experience as the disciples? As we may be facing a situation where we think we are drowning, and God, in his means of grace, continues to extend his hand out to us to hold us steady during the stormy gales and to assure us that we have been delivered from the depths of Sheol. When we walk away from the word and sacrament today, experiencing that deliverance from sin, death, devil, from Sheol, hopefully you and I together will walk away from church this morning saying to Jesus, truly, you are the Son of God. In his name, amen. And now may the peace of God